Good morning, everyone. I am Mike Atassi. I'm with Dovel Technologies, and I'm honored and thrilled to be hosting the Data Analytics panel. Everybody's talking about data, so let me begin by introducing Mr. Aaron Black from Inova. Aaron serves as the chief, and I'll let you introduce yourself as well. Please take a seat. Chief Data Officer at Inova Translational Medicine Institute. He and his team are really, and he'll tell us a little bit more about it, building a world-class bioinformatics infrastructure to actually make use of the data that is being generated. Dr. Abigail Flower is from University of Virginia. I'm really thrilled, and she has a lot of good things to say. She's a core faculty member of the Data Science Institute at UVA. I'm glad to have you here. Mr. Chris Ghion is a dear friend of mine also. I've known him for years. He is the Chief Information Officer, CIO. He's in the C-suite of businesses at the Adventist Healthcare. He has over 20 years of experience, and I can vouch for several of those years working with Chris. So welcome, and thank you, and looking for your insight. And Dr. Barbee Whitaker from AABB, known as the American Association of Blood Banks. Dr. Barbee actually is, I think it's called the Center for Patient Safety, which is an AHRQ, and you'll tell us a little bit more about it as we go. So I'm going to get you closer to lunch. There will be another panel after me, but for the next 45 minutes, I think we'll hear a lot of interesting thoughts from our panelists. Tell you a little bit about Dovel Technologies. We're a bunch of professionals. We're a medium-sized company, really dedicated to passionate about marrying informational sciences, computational sciences with biomedical sciences. So we're so passionate, sometimes we forget that they're the Washington Nationals and the Yankees, that we have to really take some time off. But we help scientists, researchers in the early part of science. We help also in the development of regulatory sciences, and we help in the delivery of healthcare. We are focusing more on health, and our passion is really to remove, not to have too much healthcare, but a lot of health, so we're all healthy people. In our panel today, we're talking about data, and we humans not only generate carbon dioxide, but we also generate a lot of data. And we are generating so much data, we're becoming immune sometimes, or intolerant to, or resisting data. Today, we'll generate 2.5 quintillion bytes of data. Those of you who forgot what quintillion is the number 1 with 18 zeros next to it in bytes. In kilobytes, that would be, well, whatever, that would be a large number still. Half of this data is probably generated in this session here this morning, but so a lot of data. So what is data analytics, and how do we take the data that we generate in health and really incorporate it into delivering better healthcare to everyone? Preventing us from going to the doctor is one of the things that researchers are looking at. How do we predict and prevent diseases before the onset and the symptoms of the disease occur? So our esteemed panelists will tell us a little bit more insights on how we use data and data analytics in the delivery of healthcare. So Aaron, let me start with you. In your practice, I know you're dealing, Inova generates a lot of data, and you're building infrastructure to capture that data and make it usable, interoperable, and transferable. So can you give us a little bit brief on what you do and how data is really helping delivering better healthcare?
Yeah, so let's make sure I do this right. Can you hear me? Okay, there we go. So, the role that we play, our data management group, is to take large disparate data sources, so think large biological data, genomics, at a very large scale, and then combine that with other data sources that are part of our health system. So electronic health records, we do a lot with patient engagement, and putting that data together in a consumable package is a challenging thing. And a lot of the people who are sitting in this room are helping us to realize that vision. And one of the things that we're looking for is to make that data, like you said, is actionable. But we have to do that in a way that provides value to the health system. And one of the challenges we have in doing this is something that I would call overfitting, which is where we take technology and we try to actually take that and apply it to what we do when it wasn't necessarily built for healthcare, it wasn't built for the type of analytics that we're doing. And that's created a lot of challenges, and we're working with others to try to eliminate those barriers. But what we found is we're trying to find partners who really truly engage with us, who are looking to solve that problem of engaging patients, because we believe that technology, and this is not my quote, I heard this a couple days ago and think it's a quote that I really like, which is great technology makes us more human. And when we're in the healthcare setting and we're patiently engaged, and I happen to experience this with my wife over the past 4 years as she's been going through some health issues, and she's doing fine. But what I found is, we really want to build this technology to make the doctors, more problem solvers, more proactive. We want to make the nurses more empathetic. So as we drive this data, we just don't want to collect data to let it sit there and to build things that aren't going to be able to be applied. And so the vision of our system is to actually be stewards of that data, to be communicators, so we can move our vision forward.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that insight. And I'm turning over to Abby. I think you're playing a major role in preparing a young generation of students who are going to become clinicians, scientists, researchers, care providers. So can you tell us a little bit about the Data Institute at UVA and what you do, and any examples you can give us? That would be great.
Sure, I could talk all day about this, and there's a lot I'd like to follow up with what you've said. So the UVA Data Science Institute, right now we run a Master of Science in the Data Sciences program. And it's a 1-year-long program, so you can imagine it's very intensive. And we take about 50 students a year, and we get them through the process. And part of the process that's very special to me and to us is the capstone project process. And the way the capstone process works is companies come to us, the hospital comes to us, different departments in the university come to us and say, hey, we've got this really cool problem. Can you help us solve it? Or can you solve it? And we give it to the kids. So we hand over these projects to the kids. We have about 16 projects each year. About a third of those are healthcare projects, which is really interesting. We really have a vested interest in healthcare. And as an example of that too, we just, as our new director, we just got Phil Bourne from the National Institute of Health as our director, which is sort of an exciting turn. But these kids go through this process of actually solving a problem and giving a deliverable product to the company or the hospital at the end of the project. And that is such an amazing learning experience for them. And it's extremely stressful and extremely hard, both for the advisors, but for the kids more importantly. I should call them, they're young adults. They're not kids. We have a wide range of ages. It's exciting because this year we are, for the first time, launching a dual MD MSDS program. So you get your MD and you get your Master in Data Sciences. We also have an MBA, that's not related here, but an MBA MSDS program as well. But we're starting to want to pull in the clinicians, obviously through that dual program I just spoke about. As an example of that. In addition, we're beginning to want to pull in the nurses. So this will be the first year we have a PhD nursing student in our cohort. I'm really excited about that. And I'm working on an initiative now to pull more nurses into understanding what's going on with data mining and machine learning, what's going on behind the scenes, so it's not so overwhelming, so it's not so scary. It sounds scary. I don't want to get near it. I don't want to understand it, and it's not. So that's a little bit about the Data Science Institute. I think we're the University of Virginia will be one of the first universities to have these dual programs. So we're really proud and excited about that. And we've just been around for 3 years, so it's just been growing by leaps and bounds. Shall I?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so there's a story I just wanted to talk about. One of the, my hat in the machine learning or at the Data Science Institute, I just gave it away, is machine learning. I teach the machine learning course, and I do a lot with machine learning. And of course, the sort of sexiest, state-of-the-art tools we have are the ones that the kids want to use, that the students really want to be applying. And they're not always the right tool for the job. We already know that. I mean, it's really exciting now to take an EKG and for the first time look at it as something that a convolutional neural network can say, oh, that's an image. I'm going to process it as an image. This is all very exciting, and that's great. But the more meaningful breakthroughs to me in machine learning are the ones that just have the greatest impact on very fundamental problems. And I'm going to tell the story and then hand it over. I've got, I could talk forever, so anybody who wants to talk can talk to me. But I read the other day about a story about a chief nursing officer over at El Camino Hospital in California. And what she did was she said, okay, we're having trouble with falls. All hospitals are facing this right now. Fall prevention is a big thing. So she said, all right, we've got to face this problem. And what she did is she recruited the aid of a data mining company. She did special training with the nurses. The company took EHR data and bedside call, button data, and they brought that data together, and they developed a system that worked with Vocera. So they plugged into existing technology, which is key. And essentially, the machine learning would be going on behind the green curtain, but a nurse would be alerted via Vocera and say, listen, patient in room X is likely to fall, begin the protocol. And the nurse goes down the hall using technology he or she is very comfortable with, already knows, and begins the protocol. They reduced falls in the hospital by 40%. So if you don't believe machine learning can have a major impact in care, I think that's one of the greatest stories I've read in a while. And I just wanted to share that. More to say later if I get the chance, but I think I should pass the baton.
Yeah. Thank you. Chris, as a chief information officer, you take data and turn it to information and you use it. And in a healthcare system like we have here, I think a lot of your time is spent on administrative tasks rather than business intelligence or how to deliver better healthcare. Can you share some insights on how technology is helping, how data analytics is helping in a care delivery organization like yours?
Yeah, so I would echo your comment, and we're doing some of that as well, and definitely machine learning and the applicability of machine learning into nursing workflows really do produce the results that you're talking about. So my answers are going to be in the context of and we're a hospital healthcare organization in Maryland, and in that context, my answers will all be based around data from what we call our Maryland all-payer model. So at a very high level, I believe Maryland's the only state in the country that is subject to this model with CMS. And basically all healthcare organizations' revenue in Maryland, inpatient revenue, is fixed. The state negotiates with the insurance providers and negotiates with the hospitals to come up with a finance model to do that. And then you have your incentives and disincentives, all based on quality of care metrics. So the gentleman that was speaking before and was talking about cutting cost versus investing in quality, we literally are living that to the tune of incentives and disincentives and fixed revenue. So in that context, we do not have the ability to turn away patients. Unlike primary care, I think there was an example that was mentioned that access, you can control that. Hospitals can't do that. So are we not able to control in some sense? Our contracted nursing costs. So in the quality of care program, the ideas are that if you hit your quality metrics, the levels of inpatient admission should go down, which theoretically shrinks the cost of providing care. We're seeing a little bit different, and not just us being unique. I think most hospitals in Maryland are like this. We're hitting our quality metrics. We're not getting penalties, but our inpatient volume's going up. And when that happens, and you budget off of a fixed budget, all that's left to bring in is contracted nursing. and you have to balance your contracted nursing against your inpatient volume. When you're in that model and you can't pass costs on to the insurance company, that's an issue. So how does all that get into to the data? Some of the things we do, just 3 very specific examples. The combination, like you said, of our EMR platform and our analytics platform provides us the data to do things in a predictive model. So 3 very tactical examples of what we do are around risk readmissions, and we call that risk of readmissions. So doing that, we're able to segment our population, look at the data that comes in every day, and start to analyze why patients in our defined area are getting admitted. So we do that, and some very tactical examples that came out of that, and I don't know the clinical reasons behind why, but we enacted a food program where we, with some of our high-risk patients, we will go shopping for them, provide them the menus, the recipes, help them shop, bring the food home, and hire people to go and cook for them, all giving people a good diet so that they do not end up back in the hospital. Second example is transportation to their primary care physicians. We'll analyze our data and we'll see who's not going to the follow-up visits that our care coordination function has set up when they leave the hospital. So we have relationships with taxi services, with Uber, with Lyft, where we literally will go and drive them to their primary care physician so they can get that care that they need. The last one is in the context of the care coordination program, we're starting now to partner with that next level care, like your nursing home care and things like that, to make sure that, okay, if someone goes to a nursing home and falls down and they came out of our hospital and they get readmitted for the same issue, that's our issue. That's not the nursing home's issue in current law. So we're trying to partner with them and share data and show them, the protocols that are needed to be able to keep people from falling down. And we, in fact, have some of our physicians in those skilled nursing facilities and retirement homes to help, or nursing facilities to help that. So hopefully tactically that shows a few different examples of how IT data really can help provide care for patients and stop them coming back to the hospitals.
That's very good. Thank you, Chris. Barbee, I'm going to turn it over to you. I was reading in the mission statement, I think, of AABB's is that personal and public health is a driver, and AABB plays a critical role through data interoperability, sharing data, and investigating data. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how data is playing a role to achieve your mission?
Sure. Can you hear me? Great. Just a little bit of background about AABB. We're the American Association of Blood Banks. So we represent the collectors of blood as well as the transfusers of blood. So the whole vein-to-vein process of blood collection and transfusion. So it's not just the Red Cross, it's also Adventist and University of Virginia and all the hospitals who are our members. We also serve about 7,000 professionals, so we're also a professional society, and we accredit, to go back to the institutional members, we accredit them to our institutional or organizational standards, which are a step up from the regulations. So we capture data in many, many ways, and my focus is on patient safety, donor health, and also public health. So there are a couple of examples that we have. My primary activity is around hemovigilance, which you might not be familiar with the word, but it means finding out about things that go wrong, understanding what those things are. So this could be a donor who faints, or it could be a patient who has a fever after a transfusion. And we analyze these events and look for ways, working with our membership and their expert knowledge and our scientists, to understand the events and to see what we can do to improve the safety of the health and safety of our donors and the safety of our patients. So that is a primary focus of mine, and we've also and we engage many of our members in our patient safety organization, which is an government-sponsored through the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality. Patient safety organizations look at adverse findings and provide expert advice back to hospitals and to groups of providers about how they can do things better. So we do a lot of benchmarking on events like mistakes and transfusion reactions. We also do benchmarking on blood utilization, because we all know that when you need a transfusion, you absolutely should have a transfusion, but you don't need to get a transfusion if you don't need it. So there's a lot of interest in utilization right now. So we capture a lot of data about transfusions and about who's giving them and who's getting them, and then try to find ways to make sure that the right patient gets the right blood product at the right time for the right reason. And then the last area that we've done a lot of interesting work is familiar to you, because last summer the blood supply and the U.S. population was threatened by the Zika virus and the mosquitoes. And so one of the concerns that we have is making sure that our members and the general public know about what's happening with the Zika virus in the blood supply. So we've built working with Dovel actually, built a really great mapping system, a geopositioning system. So when a blood donor has a positive Zika test, it gets entered into our system, and then it pops up on a little dot on a map, so you can see if there's Zika exposure. It can be either a travel exposure or mosquito exposure, and that'll show up on our map. So you can, and it's a public-facing map, so you can see whether there's a concern in your region. So those are some of the activities
Great.
we've been working on.
Thank you. Thanks for the insights. Aaron, I want to turn back to you. And you sit on a volume of data. That must be scary sometimes, to be in control of so much data and be worried about how the data is being housed, how it's being analyzed, and how it's being protected. What keeps you awake at night, if there is anything besides
Well, my dogs.
the Yankee games?
But, again, the data obviously is large, and it's at a volume that I don't think I've ever seen before. And again, in a healthcare system, we have a very risk-averse nature about protection. But in our research environments, we're incentivized to share. And we're collecting this much genomic data, and we're finding that so interesting. We know we don't have the talent internally necessarily to cover all bases. Like we're not all-knowing beings. How do we share that effectively? So what keeps me up at night is really balancing those two things. The mission is to share, to learn, to discover, and then to apply this back to healthcare. But how do you do that in a world that doesn't necessarily incentivize you to do that by default? Right? So how do you protect it, but then also allow for access? How do you do that in a systematic way? It can't be just one time. You have to do this as your business.
Right.
And so the way we've tackled this is to think about it as a business. How would we quantify what we're doing? How does the data come in? Where does it sit? How much are we charged for that? Is it in the best place possible? Is it something that people are using? And so as we're looking at technologies, we're trying to look at the full data spectrum, that whole data as an asset type of thing, from acquisition to quality control to modeling to security. Who has access? When did they access it? To where do we use this in analytics? How do we track that whole thing when we want to reproduce it? Because the scientific mind isn't thinking about that process all the way through. They're worried about their particular item that they're focused on. So how do we create an environment that can secure, like you said, but then also spark their curiosity and their ability to share with others?
If there are any, is technology lagging behind? If you have a magic wand, would you want technology to be more advanced, or is it regulation? Is it a combination of both? What is it that is, if there is anything preventing data from propagating and being used as information?
I don't think it's technology. I think it's expectations. I think it's our ability to use it. And sometimes we get too far advanced and we don't think about the fundamentals. Like if we can start to do the fundamentals right, then these technologies will start to be integrated in more effectively. It's like you have a young son or young daughter trying to teach her basketball. She's not dunking the basketball on the first day, but that's what we're watching on TV and that's what we're seeing. So we want to apply those things. But generally, we want to start with the basics and get those right and build upon that success. And again, we were talking about talent, I think, on the call. There's a lot of talent that's needed across that spectrum. So as you ingest new technologies, who's going to build it, who's going to support it, or are you going to outsource it all? So there's a lot of decisions in that value proposition that new technologies don't exactly solve anything.
Right.
They might just add confusion.
Great, thank you. Abby, back to you. It's really exciting. The doctors I deal with, especially my doctor, are completely computer illiterate. They grew up in an era, I guess, where computer and informational sciences were not used, and now they're beginning to see that. So it's exciting to see that you're training and educating young minds on the value of data, the value of informational sciences, combine that with biomedical sciences and data sciences. So where do you see that going? Do you see a younger generation of practitioners that are more computer aware or information aware and adopting that? Do you see medicine being practiced now, moving from a human practice to more of an automated practice? How is the future being shaped, is being shaped, so to speak?
I'd say absolutely to your first two questions. I think that clinicians in general, practitioners are becoming more enlightened to the data sciences. You know, they're writing fantastic papers. They're running fantastic experiments. They're learning how to ask the right question and the skills they need to get it. I still think that for us to keep making the breakthroughs we need sort of a confluence of individuals and parties. We need hardcore data scientists meeting with domain experts, working together to make things happen. And it's a confluence of technology and disciplines, and that's where you see things happen. So I certainly hope we don't become completely automated. I think, we were talking about nurses still having compassion. There's a need for that. However, and there is an intuition that is an art and a gift that machine learning may not, we can't learn, physician intuition. I wish we could. We can pick up on some of the subclinical signs maybe that are leading the clinician to feel a certain way, but that extra edge of intuition is something that I think will elude us. Nonetheless, we have precision medicine, right? We talk about precision medicine all the time. We're finding biomarkers. We're doing anomaly detection in physiological signals to help us catch things that we were never catching before, and to type a patient as a very specific subtype of patient, or even down to the, when we get to the genetic level, we have really individualized medicine. So that's going to take us pretty far. I don't know that I see us going completely automated. That's going to take a lot of work, and there are a lot of hurdles to that. So I don't think we'll see that in my lifetime. That's just my take on the situation.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, we still have a long way to go. That, like you said, we're still at the early stages of precision medicine. And Chris, when I talk, for example, to my doctors, and I meet with them, especially in a one-on-one chat, and I say, "What's your adoption of technologies?" And they see technology helps, but they also see that I need to talk to the patient, not to be sitting at a keyboard typing something. And one doctor actually told me something interesting. He said, "I do electronic health record for two things, and two things only: A, to get paid; B, not to get sued. So this is how much I will enter data into an electronic health record." So as a CIO, do you see technology helping the clinicians, doctors? Do you see it? Do they resist it? How is that? How is the industry is working for you?
So I hope it's helping, because then I'd have to go back to consulting if it wasn't, because I'd get fired. But I think it's a mix. So let me give you an example, okay? Sepsis alert, and I'm by no means clinical, so if I get a couple words wrong, I apologize. Sepsis alerting is a huge deal in terms of preventing that, and I would think all hospitals. we have quantifiable data that shows adhering to a computer-based workflow to manage and monitor sepsis. I mean, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70% reductions. And it's incredible. What you can see how technology, in using it the right way and integrating into the right place of a manual workflow, can help. And that's one example. So we go home at night saying we stopped that patient from getting sepsis, and that's a great feeling. Where does it hurt? Entering the data is a perfect example of that. You know, very rarely in my career did I think I would need to be an interior designer, but there's no thought of where to place a computer in a hospital room. So where do you place it? Well, you place it on the table. Well, if you place it on the table, that means the physician's back and the nurse's back is to you when they're trying to talk to you and your family. Well, that can't happen. So place it outside. Well, if you place it outside, everybody's writing stuff down on a piece of paper, and then they go type it in the alcove when they're on break. That defeats the whole purpose, right? So what does that mean? For us, that meant a more of an voice recognition into Dragon technologies. But the key is that it helps and it hurts, and the skills of an IT staff to help figure that out goes much beyond IT. And we have to understand in a clinician's workflow where that potential disruption is, and they expect us to fix that, and we need to fix it, and that's what we're working on. So my answer is the typical sum of each, but you know, to close out the question, we've recognized in IT we need different skill sets than IT to be effective, and I gave those examples. Right. But we've seen very specific examples in the context of quality of care, how when the physicians and nurses start to see the data, then they're a little bit more receptive to injecting computer-based workflow into their, computer-based processes into their workflow.
Great, thank you, Chris. And Barbee, I want to ask you a question about data interoperability and how AABB deals with data. And I'll give an example. Data in and of itself is not interoperable or usable unless it is mapped to certain taxonomy and certain thesaurus, so to speak. So you and I, for example, if we disagree, we look at the thesaurus and see what the data means, what that data element means. And that is really a tough subject, to actually take some data and make it interoperable and usable by someone else. How is AABB dealing with data interoperability in a sense that data that is generated, say, in the country of Ghana is being understandable or interoperable with data that is being generated, say, in Miami, Florida?
So we are working on some projects with other countries and trying to use, so AABB as a standard setting organization, we work a lot with groups of people to come up with that common lexicon, that common thesaurus, so that we know we're speaking the same language. So over the past years, we've developed common definitions in collaboration with our international counterpart, the International Society for Blood Transfusion, for donor adverse reaction definitions. We've worked with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to develop common definitions for adverse reactions to transfusions, and we collaborate internationally on those definitions. So the definitions are key, and it's very much at the foundation of the things that we do. Some of the challenges that we're seeing now is that even though we have the same definitions, sometimes the technology interferes with our ability to capture those definitions from the folks who want to share data with us. We see data blocking. We see places where one Cerner EHR can't speak to another Cerner. It can't compare the same data to another Cerner EHR, and Epic is the same. So I think there are a lot of challenges ahead for the technology, but I think we all can see the vision of how beneficial it will be to be able to take these common words and common phrases and understanding of what these events are, and to be able to bring them up to a level where we're all speaking the same language.
Right. Yeah, data interoperability is, I'll tell you a personal story. I made an appointment at a dermatologist, and they told me go online and fill out the forms. I thought, great, so filled out the form. Turned out you have to print them off. It's a PDF. And you have to hand carry them to the doctor. And so I asked the receptionist, I said, what do you do with these forms? She said, we enter them in the computer. I said, I just did yesterday. Said, yeah, but we have to re-enter them. We don't have a system. I said, but my record exists at my primary physician. Why am I doing that again? So, of course, they said, what medication? I said, none, because I'm not taking any. Then I remembered when I'm seeing the doctor that I take Zyrtec for nasal, and I take Nasonex. So I said, I forgot to put these medicines on my chart. He said, it's okay. Okay, fine, it's okay. So there's these, we talk about data, it exists everywhere, but a lot of it is not really being used in a sense to turn it into information. So I think I see the end sign here, and I'm getting you closer to lunch, so I'm hoping there will be a great lunch. But I want to open the floor for some questions to our panelists. If there are any questions, this is a good time to ask. And you also get to see them during lunch, I guess, if you're here, or you ask them questions. But are there any questions to our panelists? Any thoughts? Anything? You all have your electronic health records filled out and ready to be interoperable and going?
Can I add? I'm
Yeah,
sorry, because
please.
this is a huge pet peeve of mine.
Yes.
So I'm going to add to that comment, and maybe in your professions, you could help us as a provider-based healthcare to do this. Okay, so in the context of providing care, we have Cerner. Cerner is comprised of 18 separate systems, and that's why they can't talk. Having said that, in those 18 systems, I have 37 separate systems out there in the world that push data into and out of Cerner to the tune of 175,000 transactions a day. And I'm a very small provider. The gentleman from Virginia is probably exponentially more in terms of that data, okay? That data is interoperable. It's mixing. It's used to provide care. 18 systems interacting with 37 systems in real time, 175,000 times a day. It's interoperable. Why can't that same thing be done in the context of information? And the answer is because when these EMR vendors give up the ownership of that data, then the EMR becomes a utility, and they lose the ability to own the information. So what you see is these EMR vendors standing up analytical platforms and wanting you to pay again for the data that you paid the first time to enter. And what boggles my mind, and I go to all these sessions from the EMR vendors, and some they agree, some I get kicked out, but if you can, at 175,000 times a day, process and intermingle discrete data, you can't tell me you can't collaborate that in the context of a discharge summary and pass that over to ECW. They don't do it. There's no technical reason why they can't do it. Exactly. Because they give up the data. So again, maybe I'm biased, CIO at a healthcare organization, but in your worlds, if you ever come across and interact with the EMR providers, that's a huge issue for us. And it's not my issue from an IT perspective. When a mother's on the table with Fetal Link and that Fetal Link system goes down and that baby can't be monitored because the information's not flowing back and forth between ECW and Cerner, that's a problem. And it's not a technical problem. So, we need the help as healthcare providers to communicate that message and be able to share information so that we can take care of people. So I get off my soapbox.
No,
but that's huge for me.
That's actually huge for many of us, especially the companies that are here, and it's an incentive to actually be innovative. If I go to Hong Kong and pull my ATM card, which is SunTrust, which is a member, and I insert it in the machine, it knows my balance right here. It knows my PIN, and I can draw money in Hong Kong from my own bank account in the US. So if that is done, if I visit 6 doctors, if I'm not at Kaiser or at your facility, I have 6 electronic health records, and none of them really is shared. And I bet you there's 6 different pieces of information in each one of them. When we heard in the morning the talk about the waste in our system, About a third of it, actually Institute of Medicine or Academy of Medicine saying that about 50% of our $3 trillion expenditure in healthcare is wasted, is unnecessary, or can be avoided. So it is really an incentive for us who are in the technology field to start, and I appreciate what you talked about, Abby, is that we're training now a new generation of clinicians and scientists and researchers to be aware of the power of information technology and informational sciences that it brings. The human mind cannot really capture all the data points now to deliver a better healthcare. So that's why I'm saying informational sciences can help. Aaron, you wanted to-
my comment was
Yeah,
very
please.
similar because I've gone through this experience again with my wife. We were at actually 6 different hospitals. This is in less than 4 years. I have a stack of paper about that heavy, and that's how we exchange information between hospital systems that have billions of dollars in revenue. So when we talk about putting money where it matters, it's back to fundamentals. This is not a technology problem. It's not. So we talk about all these advanced concepts, but getting that lower level stuff completed makes all the technologies you would put on top of that exponentially more beneficial. There are things about my wife's diagnostic Odyssey that we would have found by some trivial exchange of information, but 4 years later, I now have a nice paperweight or weights of paper sitting there with, I won't even tell you the amount of bills that we had. And again, back to technology being great technology being done because we want to be better humans. I know the toll that took on her, and being in information technology and being around that going, I can't explain why that happens. I can't, how are you as a person, as someone you care about, that says, why can't you make this exchange happen? Like you said, it happens all the time.
Right.
And the biggest thing we saw the payers, when we went to the payer side, I got a very detailed bill of all the things that had happened, and they had their stuff together because it was very tied to the bottom line. So yeah, I don't think it's a technology problem.
Right.
There's many things that were said this morning that were more pertinent to that issue.
So one final thought to take from this panel is that technology is there. Convince your doctor, your clinician, your wife, your husband, whoever it is to use it. It's there. If Costco can use it, if Jiffy Lube is using it, why aren't we using it and exploiting it to the maximum extent possible? Thank you very much for the panelists. I appreciate it. And